Welcome aboard the Ear to There podcast, the podcast that'll help you vacation like a pro in any Disney destination. For those of you standing, please sit down and hold on throughout our journey and get ready to learn how to have the time of your life. And now, here's your host, Phil Gramlich.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Ear to There podcast. I'm your host, Phil Gramlich. I'm also the owner and operator of Ear to There Travel, which is a Disney specialized travel agency. It's my job to help you have the best possible Disney vacation by taking away the stress and anxiety of planning a trip so you can focus on the fun things like your family and enjoying the magic. You can find the podcast, my blog, or request a free quote over at eartotheretravel.com. Now grab a drink, grab a snack, and as a famous mouse once said, on with the show. Has this ever happened to you? You're out somewhere and you overhear a bit of information about Walt Disney World that seems like it could be true. But then, after you think about it for a minute, you start to doubt how true it really is. Maybe you're on a Disney bus headed to a theme park. Maybe you're at the airport. Or maybe you're even in line at the supermarket. Disney news and rumors pop up all the time, so it's really difficult to figure out what's true and what's a bit of, fan fiction. On this episode of the podcast, we're going to talk about the top false rumors of Walt Disney World. Here to talk about these false rumors of Walt Disney World is the man behind all the magic of the worldofwalt.com. He's a man who is constantly sitting up late at night and inventing new false rumors to spread about the Disney parks. Herb Leibacher, welcome back to the podcast.
Hey, Phil. Thanks for inviting me. And actually, if you knew me, you knew I was not a late night kind of guy. So I spend my mornings coming up with the false rumors, not my nights.
Yeah, that's probably true. You and I both. When we record these at night, I have to set an alarm to make sure I don't fall asleep before they start. But it's kind of a fun topic, right? Because I almost wanted to call this one things you overheard a bus drivers say, because the Disney bus drivers are famous for giving people false hope and telling them, this is coming in, 2018, so mark your calendars and all that. And these ideas never come to fruition. So I think, we've all heard the stories. We've all heard that all these crazy things are coming to Walt Disney World. So it's kind of fun to look at them,
I agree. It is fun to talk about them. And I think a lot of them have a little nugget of truth somewhere behind the rumor. So there's something that people can point to that may actually be true, but then they draw some false conclusions from it. And I think we'll see some of those along the way, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so let's get right into it. And since you're the guest, which is cool because we've done it the other way as well, I'm going to have you, if you're good with that, you go ahead and give us the first one.
Okay, I'm ready to go. So I think one that we often hear and maybe even hope for is that Disney is going to expand the monorail. And this is another one, or this is one, where there are some nuggets of truth that people can point to, but then maybe draw a conclusion which might not happen. And so the nugget of truth is that when people sign up for Saratoga Springs DVC, they have to sign a document called a product understanding checklist, a true legal document by Disney. And in the document, it talks about a right-of-way for the monorail. And so a lot of people see this document by Disney, which talks about a right-of-way, and they think, wow, Disney is going to be building a monorail to Saratoga Springs. Wouldn't that be cool? Or maybe they'll be expanding it and the monorail will be going to other places. Well, the right-of-way that's built into the legal setup of the Disney property was created way before there was a Saratoga Springs, even way before there was a Disney Institute, when there was a grand master plan to connect the Disney Village, or now Disney Springs, to the rest of the parks. But a lot of those things just didn't happen. And so I'm not very optimistic that we're going to see an expansion of the monorail, even if there was some legal setup done a long time ago. And the other rumor that I hear about this one is that, it's so expensive. It's $1 million a mile. Yeah. And if Disney could do it for $1 million a mile, it would be a bargain, and I bet it would have been done 20 years ago. Yeah. And so examples I've seen, Las Vegas built a monorail system, and for 4 miles, it cost $650 million. That's like $150 million a mile. And in Sao Paulo, Brazil, they did one for about 50 million a mile. So, I mean, it's definitely tens of millions of dollars for every mile. And at least the way things are set up today, there's no income from such a huge expenditure. And so while I would love to see a monorail come, and I hear this rumor often, I'm betting it's not in the cards, at least not in the near term.
Yeah, you're right. You do hear this one all the time, and that's exactly the figure that I've heard too, is the $1 million a mile.
Yeah.
And I think when I first heard that, maybe when I was on the college program, I won't even tell you how many years ago, but it was a while ago. I've said it before, so you can look up the other past episodes of the podcast. You'll find out. But you hear it all the time, and I am like you. I wish that they would do it, because who doesn't want to get out of your bed at Animal Kingdom Lodge and jump right on the monorail and get to Animal Kingdom or Magic Kingdom in a matter of minutes? But it doesn't look like it's going to happen. They have so much other. They're just doing so much more down there right now with the roads. I mean, the construction with the road system down there is crazy. I didn't realize just how massive it was until I was just down there really recently. And just the overpasses they're putting in the roads, it's insane how much work they're doing down there on that kind of thing. So, yeah, I really don't see the new monorail coming. Although it would be fun. And I kind of want that monorail from the airport. Remember that was talked about for a while, or that was at least rumored for a while? That would be pretty cool. Just jump on a monorail and you're, a half hour later, you're sitting in your room with Polly. I wish we could do that.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be nice. There are still occasional articles in the local Orlando press about development by private companies from the airport, maybe to the convention center, or to the International Drive area. And so I guess if that ever gets close, I could see Disney wanting to jump in because they wouldn't want to be left out. But a lot of those things seem like they're a lot more talk than they're reality, unfortunately.
Yeah, I completely agree. All right, so from the monorail, I'm going to go to, well, I'm not going to go to a place at all. This rumor is one, or it's not a rumor actually, it's just a false fact that's been around forever. And it's the Walt Disney quote, and I'm doing air quotes if you can see it. If you can dream it, you can do it. And you see this everywhere. If you can dream it, you can do it is always attributed to Walt Disney, when in fact, he never said that. That's not a Walt Disney quote at all. It was actually written by a guy named Tom Fitzgerald, who was I believe the show writer for Horizons when it opened in Epcot, and that was a part of the script for the attraction. Walt Disney, he had a lot of famous, very very famous quotations over the years. He said a lot of famous, important things, but he actually never went on record and said, "If you can dream it, you can do it." So, for me, I think that's a fun one. And actually, last year when I was doing the Dopey Challenge, or maybe it was, I'm not quite sure, it might have been a couple years ago when I did the Goofy Challenge in Walt Disney World, the Run Disney races. In Walt Disney World, on the side of the road, they put these little quotes to motivate runners as they're running by. And believe it or not, there was a little sign that said, if you can dream it, you can do it, Walt Disney. And I was like, man, who was proofreading this stuff? It's crazy that Disney would actually have let that be on the road somewhere. So yeah, that's not actually a Walt Disney quote.
And Phil jumps to the side of the road and rips up the sign and tears it into pieces and screams out, "What are you thinking?"
You know me, Aaron. That's what I wanted to do. That if I wasn't, worried about getting kicked off the course and not getting my medal, I might have done it. But yeah, it's crazy, right? That they would actually have that on the course. Somebody wasn't doing their homework.
Yeah, and it sounds like something he would say. I mean, it's a very inspirational sort of thing. So you're right. It's interesting that one gets attributed to him. I always enjoy reading the construction walls, which sounds kind of weird. Normally construction walls are ugly, but at Disney they're very interesting, and many of them have quotes. And so Disney said so many great things that they have a lot of material to choose from. So it's kind of fun to do the impossible, or the way to get started is to quit talking and to begin doing. So there are so many good true quotes can be attributed to him. It's funny that this one which he didn't say, always comes up.
Yeah, it really is. And yeah, it just really blows my mind. Again, I know I'm a broken record here, that it would be on an official piece of Disney, signage in somewhere. Even if it was just only runners saw it that day, it just drove me bonkers. But anyway, all right, Herb, so we're ready for your next one.
All right. So this is one that I hear every once in a while, and I think is really interesting. So many people say that if the weather gets really bad in Florida, as sometimes it does with hurricanes, that Disney can take down Cinderella Castle.
Right, of course.
And so it makes perfect sense, right? I mean, it's like a big erector set. Well, unfortunately, that's just not true. That castle was built out of cement and cinder block, and it ain't going nowhere. And really, I think probably the last thing you would want in the middle of 80-mile-an-hour winds is to put up a big construction crane and to start lowering down the turrets. So it's a fun rumor. People talk about it often, but I'm afraid to say there is no method of disassembling Cinderella Castle. It is designed to stand up to the elements and to do so in one piece.
Right, so it was designed to withstand the hurricane force winds and all of that and the rains. Have you ever heard this is even kind of funnier, that it's built on like a platform that could be an elevator? And this is one that I've heard too. And when the hurricane's coming in, they just kind of hit a couple buttons and the ground opens up and Cinderella Castle goes 13 stories into the ground and they close it up. That way they don't even have to worry. I've actually heard this. Wow. They don't have to worry about it. I love that. And there's another one too, that this isn't about the castle being disassembled, but there was a woman, and I think this is true, but this might be really bad, another urban legend, but I read a story a couple of years ago that a woman sued Disney claiming that a stone fell off of Cinderella Castle and hit her and caused her like a major injury. And she ended up being informed, obviously out of court, that there are no stones that make up Cinderella Castle at all. And there's no possible way that a stone could have fallen off the castle, because he said it's fiberglass, it's concrete, there's no actual, although it looks like there's stones on there, there's not one stone that makes up Cinderella Castle. So I always thought that was kind of a funny little story. I don't know if it's true, but
that is a funny one. The idea of the castle going into the ground is interesting too, because the water table in Florida is so high. You go down 2 feet and you have a swimming pool. So that would be tough.
You would think people would kind of put their heads together and figure that out, but apparently they don't. So that's a good one. All right, so okay, so my next one is this is one that I've heard countless times, especially if you're on the internet at all and you look on the Disney message boards or the forums, and it's that Disney is planning a 5th theme park. While they may in fact be planning a fifth park in the distant future, or maybe even the not so distant future, they haven't broken ground. One isn't imminent. One, they have enough to worry about right now with the construction that they have going on in their current theme parks, that I assure you they're not building a 5th theme park right now. The one that seems to come up a lot is the idea of a villains park, and I think that stems from when 20,000 Leagues was closed, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and the Magic Kingdom, when that was closed, there was a rumor that they were going to put in a villains area, and that actually was for a while a planned part of the park. They were actually going to put in like a little town and a roller coaster that was all inhabited by villains. Unfortunately, that never happened. But yeah, so it's the villains park, and a lot of times you hear the one with they're going to build this new park that has all the rides that they've closed over the years. So they're going to have this brand new theme park with dated rides like Horizons and Mr. Toad's Wild Ride and Snow White's Scary Adventures and stuff like that. And yeah, that's just, I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but that's just not in the cards. It's not going to happen. But I swear I hear that, really often from the Disney community that, oh, did you hear that they're going to build this? No, they're not building that. It's not going to happen. So, yeah, it's just one that you hear all the time.
Yeah, I think it's one that we hope will happen, and maybe someday, while I'm still on the side of the sod, it will happen. But I don't see it in the near term. And the one about a park of all of the extinct attractions, I think, is especially interesting. I would love another chance to take a spin on Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. And the day that the Carousel of Progress closes, I will shed a single manly tear. But I can't imagine why Disney would want to take all the things that were really not working anymore and put them all together and think it would somehow then work. So as much as I miss those things, they're usually gone for a reason. And they're gone for many reasons. Sometimes it's sponsorship, sometimes it's structural issues. But oftentimes they're gone just because they didn't have the drawing power that they did in the past. And so pulling all of that stuff together and thinking it would somehow be different, so a bunch of things that don't work when put together suddenly work, it just probably wouldn't be the case. So I can't really imagine that being the unifying theme for a future park.
Yeah, and you would, I think it would work once, right? Like you would be so excited. Oh, you have Mr. Toad's back. You have Horizons back. You have 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea back. And you're like, oh my God, I can't wait to go do it. And then you do it once and you're like, now I know why they closed these in the first place. I'm not going to spend my money on this again. This is silly. And then you would never, Disney would be out a lot of park hoppers, I think, because people would be like, I'll just do one day, one park. I'm not going to that extinct attractions park again. So yeah, I agree. I think that is a silly idea, but it's for nostalgics and for people who love like the memories and, a lot of people, your first ever trip to Disney included these awesome attractions that aren't there anymore. But like you said, they closed for a reason. They closed because people weren't, listen, and I've said this in my blog. I don't know if I've said it on the podcast. People weren't doing the rush to Maelstrom in the morning at Epcot.
Yeah.
And everybody's gets mad at me, and I may take a couple emails because I'm saying this right now. I'm excited. Bring Frozen on, man. I'm ready. Because I like the Maelstrom, sure. But if I ever walked past it and it was more than a 5-minute wait, I said, we'll walk back later. You never ran. You never were like, hey, let me get my fast pass to Maelstrom. I have to make sure I get it. No, you didn't.
Yeah.
So I know people are I'm definitely going to get some emails on that one, but oh well.
Yeah, an attraction where the ending is an oil well. I could see why it's not there anymore.
You're right. It was an interesting finale, wasn't it? It's not exactly like the Splash Mountain zippity doodah finale. I mean, you're getting an oil well, but although I will miss the little Norwegian fishing town at the end. I kind of like that. That was cool.
Yeah, that was very cool.
I hope they keep a little element of that in the new Frozen attraction.
Yeah, me too.
But anyway, all right, Herb, so over to you for your next one.
Okay. This is one I hear a lot as well. So I'm going to head over to the Magic Kingdom, and I'm going to Liberty Square and the Haunted Mansion. So towards the end of the Haunted Mansion, as you're going through the graveyard, there's a scene with a series of busts, and the busts are singing. And many people look at one of the busts and they say, that's Walt Disney's face on that bust. But actually, it's not. So Walt Disney's projected face does not appear in the Haunted Mansion. Many people mistake that for who it really is, which is Thurl Ravenscroft. So Thurl was known as the voice of Tony the Tiger, and he sang in You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch. He has this very distinctive, deep voice. So he does appear in the Haunted Mansion. His face is projected on one of those busts while seeing grin-grinning ghosts. But sadly, it is not Walt Disney's face in the Haunted Mansion.
Yeah, what's funny is now I'm going to be singing You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch the rest of the night. But there's one part about that song that always bothered me. And this is going off on a really weird tangent, sorry. But the song is fine. It's Christmas. It's the Grinch, and I get it. It's Dr. Seuss. But the one part when he sings, You nauseate me, Mr. Grinch, I always thought that was a little bit harsh. It's a little, I listen to that with my kids now, and my 5-year-old's like, what's nauseate mean? I'm like, they probably could have left that out of the song. I'm sure it's, it was fine in the day that they put it out there. But anyway, so that's, you're right. That's not Walt Disney on that bus. What's really funny is I did an interview, and if you listen to the podcast, you've heard it, hopefully, with Disney legend Rolly Crump a couple weeks ago. And He told a really cool story about how that effect started. He went out to lunch one day. He was working with Yale Gracie, who's another Disney Imagineer and legend, on the original ideas for the Haunted Mansion. And he said they didn't know what they were doing. They were kind of sitting in an office all day, just coming up with crazy off the wall ideas. So he went to lunch and he came back, and Yale Gracie said, "Look, I found this cool thing. Look at this." And he, just using a simple projector, projected, I forget the name of the actor, but an actor's face onto this little tiny Beethoven bust that they had. And it looked like Beethoven was singing and talking, the bust of Beethoven. And that's where that effect came from. This is simple. He was trying stuff in the office, and he found this thing that kind of worked. And they both flipped for it, and they showed Walt Disney, and he loved it. And he said, "Yeah, that has to go in a Haunted Mansion." And pretty much it went right in, just almost exactly how they came up with it. So I thought that was a really cool story that he told.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's another one. You're right. And I've actually had that before I was in the know, quote unquote. I thought it was Walt Disney too. So I have to admit that's not that outlandish of an idea, because it does kind of look like him.
It does kind of look like him. You're right.
Yeah. So.
And I'm wondering how we get a job where we get to sit around in an office and just invent stuff.
I know.
To go into a theme park attractions. That sounds like a pretty nice job.
I know. I don't think they do it like that anymore, right? It's so, there's no guys. Now they all have like real jobs that they have to, you have deadlines. And it seemed when talking to him that it wasn't like that. It was, hey, you guys have good ideas. You go ahead and figure this out and let me know when you're done. Like they had the freedom to just come up with anything they wanted. Really cool back to work in Imagineering back in those days, or Red, I guess, as it was known back then.
Yeah.
All right, so from the Haunted Mansion, I'm not going to go very far for my next one, because I'm going over to Adventureland in the Magic Kingdom and Pirates of the Caribbean, or near Pirates of the Caribbean, because there's long been a rumor that there's a hidden club right near the Pirates of the Caribbean attraction at the Magic Kingdom. And I think that's because of Club 33 out in Disneyland, that is in New Orleans Square, where Pirates of the Caribbean is out there, which is an actual, it's not really hidden anymore, because I think everyone knows about it, especially when it got expanded, I guess, last year. But yeah, there's been a long rumor that there is a private club that, some members only people get to experience near Pirates in Adventureland at the Magic Kingdom, and that's simply not true. There's really nothing there except backstage area, and from what I remember, I don't think there's even a parking lot back there. It's pretty tight where they put that in, because originally there wasn't going to be a Pirates of the Caribbean at the Magic Kingdom, so there was really no room to put a club. So there's definitely no insider club anywhere near Pirates in the Magic Kingdom. Although I still read that online that people went there or they saw it, or trust me, you didn't go there, you didn't see it. It's not there.
This would be one that would be very cool, although I'd probably be a little disappointed that I couldn't afford the entry fee, which I've heard is pretty incredible. This is another one where there's probably some nuggets of truth that contributed to it, because over at Epcot there are plenty of corporate suites. So I've actually had the opportunity to go into the one in Test Track where GM employees can go, and it's very nice. I mean, there are big conference spaces up there and huge windows that look out of the park, and free soda, and those places do exist. There are quite a few of them in Epcot. Right. I think, just as you're saying, there's unfortunately just not one near Pirates of the Caribbean in the Magic Kingdom.
Yeah, and if there was one, come on, how cool would that be? They just theme it to pirates, and you could go in, and your server's a pirate. They need something like that, I think. I mean, the new Skipper Canteen, not new anymore, but the newish Skipper Canteen. I love that idea. I love the Jungle Cruise skippers or your servers there, and it's a really cool thing. I think it'd be cool to have a pirate server, but unfortunately, they don't have that at Magic Kingdom. So, all right. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, hopefully someone from Disney is listening in, Phil. So you should copyright this idea, and then you can claim it once it happens.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't know who's listening, but that would be great if somebody was. All right, so let's see. We were at Pirates, and now you're up here for your next one.
Okay, so this is a fun rumor that I've heard, and it is unfortunately not true. So I have heard people tell me that the posted wait times for attractions are fully accurate and guaranteed, and that if you don't wait in the line for that amount of time, you get a free prize, like you get a free fast pass, or you get a free popcorn, or something like that. And while Disney spends huge amounts of time and money trying to make sure that those wait times are informative, they are not guaranteed, and sometimes they're not accurate. So it would be kind of cool to get a prize if you catch Disney when they're 5 minutes off in their estimates, but it's just not the case. And sometimes I have heard from reputable sources that the wait times are accurate are not accurate on purpose. So especially at the end of the day, they're trying to clean out the park. They might up the wait time so that you just say, "Oh, I don't want to wait another 45 minutes for Space Mountain. It's time to go." So the wait times are not always accurate, although I think usually they are, and they are definitely not guaranteed.
That would be like Domino's, right? If back in like the 90s, if you don't get on the ride in 30 minutes, you get something for free. Yeah, no, they're not. They're not always accurate. You're right. And how many times have you been in the Magic Kingdom and you walk by Peter Pan's flight and it says 25 minutes and you look at the line and you go, "No way. Nope." You're like, I've been here a million times. I know what a 25-minute line looks like, and that, sir, is not a 25-minute line. Yeah. I mean, if you've been to the parks enough, you can kind of, just by looking at what the outside of the attraction is, you can kind of gauge, what the line is going to be.
Yeah.
And you're right, a lot of times it isn't accurate at all. There's a couple that you'll never know, like Soarin'. I feel like because that's inside and it's in a pavilion and you never know, like it'll say 90 minutes. I've been on that attraction when it said 90 minutes and I waited 30, and I've been on it when it said 90 minutes and I waited 120. Only because I don't know what the deal with that is. I hope with the new theater that they're opening, it'll thin that out a little bit, but my fear is that it won't, because it's a new film and it's going to be even more popular now in Epcot. So, I mean, I don't know how to feel about that, but
you're right. It's going to be interesting to see what the third theater does to that line, because I've kind of got the same theory that it's going to attract so many more people who would otherwise have skipped it because they've seen it, that we may even see longer lines, even though there's a bigger capacity. And the tricky thing about Soarin' is, just like you're saying, you can't see that line. You are committed to it before you really have any idea of what's in front of you.
That's true. It's funny too, Herb. I just had I put a question out there on my, I don't know, Facebook or something, and I asked people what they thought, what line they don't mind waiting in. And I had someone say Soarin', and I thought to myself, man, I couldn't feel more opposite than that. That is one of the attractions that really the line, and I don't want to dissuade people from riding it at all, because it's a fantastic attraction, and I can't wait to see what it's going to be like when they, redo the film and all. But that queue is one of the most kind of, I don't want to say boring, but boring queues out there. You just kind of, there's not a whole lot going on. They have a couple screens that, kind of rotate some images and stuff, but I was hoping they would do a little bit with it while it was down for a refurbishment, because it's just not a queue that I really enjoy waiting in.
Yeah. I guess the good thing is it is air conditioned and enclosed.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
At least it's a little more comfortable than some of them out there.
That's true. And you get the great putty from Seinfeld pre-show, so I guess that's cool too. So, all right. So, before I want to get into trouble. I want to get emails for that too, I'm sure. So I want to go over to I have another Magic Kingdom one for my next one, and it's we're heading over to Space Mountain, and this is a fun one. Because this is only fun because it actually didn't happen. And there's a story that's a very unlucky guest at some time, lost their head literally while riding Space Mountain in what year did it? In the late 70s, I think they said. So literally they rode Space Mountain and came off without a head. And that's 100% incorrect. That never actually happened. But the fun part about that story is I've read rumors that it was a crash test dummy that somehow, this is why this story became popular, was it was really light and got kind of thrown from the seat a little bit on one of the turns. And when it did get thrown from the seat, it actually did get decapitated. The test dummy, of course, by one of the lower hanging beams on Space Mountain. So that's, I think, the genesis of that rumor. But if you've ever ridden Space Mountain with the lights on, which I have just by chance, it does seem like those beams are pretty darn close to your head. There's not a whole lot of room, on that attraction for movement. They tell you keep your hands in the car at all time, and I would recommend you absolutely do that because it's tight. While you're not going to get decapitated or lose an arm or a leg, it's a little scary going through there with the lights on, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's even scary if you just are looking into Space Mountain. So if you get the good fortune of being on the People Mover and the lights are on, you can see how packed in that track is into such a small space. It's definitely one where I hang on. And this one just sort of screams 70s to me. I don't know why. It's like Smokey and the Bandit and 10-4 Good Buddy and, decapitation on Space Mountain. It just sounds like a 70s kind of thing. Yeah,
it's couldn't be more untrue. So I hope nobody listening is like, oh my God, I'm never going to ride it again because you're okay. But it is, you're right. That attraction is packed. And you think because it looks outside, the dome is so big that goes over that attraction. But when you're actually on it, or on the People with the lights on, you see it is just this really compact roller coaster that I think if they put that outside, you might be like, I'm not riding that. There's no way I'm going to go on that because it's that compact. It's that, and there's 2 tracks, right? I mean, so it's crazy to think about that it's like that. But it is a great attraction. So don't skip it. But because that's a completely untrue rumor.
Go on Space Mountain. Just keep your hands in the car.
Yeah, keep your hands, your head, your feet, everything in it. Yeah, but I always feel weird, like because I'm not tall at all, and I always worry about tall people. Like they have to be not because you're worried about getting decapitated on the attraction, but because there's no leg room. So I always wonder how. It can't be comfortable for people who are, 6 feet and above because your feet have to be like on your chest when you're riding that thing. Like,
this is another 70s element of Space Mountain. It was designed for smaller people, I think.
Right. I mean, I'm 5'7". I fit very comfortably into that attraction, but I think anyone who's a little taller than me won't. So, all right, Herb. So we're ready for your next one, whenever you are.
Okay, so I think this is my last one, and this is one that I have to come clean. I actually thought was true for a while, and based on some research I did on the internet, we know the internet's always right.
Always.
I think it's not true, and the rumor was a great one. It's actually a great story, and it has to do with Disney's Hollywood Studios, or back in the day, the Disney MGM Studios. So on the Great Movie Ride, there is a scene with Casablanca. And there is an airplane in the scene, and the rumor was that the airplane in the scene in the Great Movie Ride was the actual airplane used in the filming of the movie Casablanca. Great story. So the airplane was a Lockheed Electra 12A, and the story is that Disney went looking for one of these Electras and found one and matched up the serial number and compared it to the serial number of the plane used in the film, and it was the plane used in the film. Great story. Unfortunately, not a true one.
Right.
So what I've read is that Casablanca was filmed shortly after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, so there was a lockdown in many of the airports in the West Coast. So that scene in the film was actually filmed in a soundstage. And there wasn't enough room in the soundstage to fit an actual full-size airplane. So the prop people built a replica of the Lockheed plane out of plywood and balsa, and they kind of tucked it back in the corner, and they hired very short people and had them walk around, and that's the reason why there's all of this fog in that scene. There's really not a lot of fog in Casablanca, the city, but they needed to hide how fake this plane looked, and that's why they put a lot of fog there. So the fact that there was no real airplane used in the filming of that scene in Casablanca kind of makes it hard for them to have that plane in the Great Movie Ride. It was a great story. I wanted it to be true, and for a time I thought it was. But folks, I don't think it's the case. I don't think the prop that you see in the Great Movie Ride was actually from the film.
You know what, Herb? I love that story, and to be honest with you, I was hoping you wouldn't mention the very short people part, because that was the part of the story that I love the most. That that's actually true. That the movie, the production people went out of their way to find people that would fit that scale of the plane to, the fake plane, to make it look like they were, the plane was a full size plane, and it's not. And
yeah,
and it's a really cool piece of Hollywood like magic, because listen, I love that movie, and it's one of those ones where when I was a kid and maybe even a teenager, I said I'm never going to watch a black and white movie. I'm not doing that. But in college, I watched it, and I love it. It's such a great movie. It really is just a classic, and Humphrey Bogart is so cool. Like, you couldn't get cooler than him in that movie. And I really wish I could do an impression. I can't, so I'm not even going to try. But
how about Ingrid Bergman? Could you do an impression of her?
I wish. Yeah, I mean, I'd be cool with either one, to be honest with you, but I can't do either. But he does. There's this line in that movie, and I'm not going to do the impression, but there's a girl that meets up with Humphrey Bogart in the bar in his cafe, Rick's Cafe, and he says, she says, "Where were you last night?" And he says, "That's so long ago, I can't remember." And then she says, "Will I see you tonight?" And then he goes, "I don't make plans that far ahead." And I just love that line. Always kills me. I think it's like the epitome of cool, man. Humphrey Bogart was so cool. But yeah, so you're right, and that's not true at all, that the planes are the same. What I've read too, and I don't know if this is true, I'm pretty sure it is, but maybe you can kind of back me up on it, is that Disney did actually buy one of those planes. You had the model, I don't know it off the top of my head, but they did actually buy that plane. They cut it down the middle, and the plane on the Great Movie Ride is the front end of the plane, and the tail end of the plane ended up in the plane wreck scene on the Jungle Cruise.
Yeah.
I think that's true. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's how that worked out. Am I right?
Yes, I saw that as well, and I do believe that's true. Yep.
Yeah, so it's kind of a neat little thing too, that Disney never lets anything go to waste, which I think is really cool.
Yeah.
Even the stuff they had on that back lot in Hollywood studios for years, that's going to be used somewhere. Like they always find, new places for it. Except I think we talked about it before, the Nautilus subs. They are all kind of gone in a landfill somewhere. That's a shame. But that was on episode, I'm trying to remember, 4, I believe, of the Ear to There podcast. So if you want to hear it, go back and listen to that one. All right, so that's my shameless plug for my previous podcast for the night. All right, so my last one is maybe the most famous and the silliest of all Disney false, rumors or whatever. It's that Walt Disney is cryogenically frozen underneath the Magic Kingdom. Now, I've heard underneath the Magic Kingdom, I've heard underneath Disneyland, I've heard under Pirates of the Caribbean, Space Mountain. The gist of the story is Walt Disney dies. Right before he dies, he is, put into some kind of freezer and frozen for, until they find a cure for cancer, or they can somehow thaw him out and he can go on leading the Disney company for future generations. Unfortunately, that's not true at all. Go ahead, Herb. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to give you my thoughts on that. which basically just boiled down to you. I mean, I just I don't think that's happening.
No, I don't know, Herb. There's a lot. I worked for Disney. I've been in the utility rooms. There are a lot of freezers under there. Maybe he is. No, he's not at all. He's not down there. As far as I can tell, I've been under a lot of that park, and I haven't seen him. Not that anyone would let me know where he was, but I don't think he's under there. When he did pass away, he actually was cremated, and his ashes were interred at the Forest Lawn Memorial Park Cemetery in Glendale, California, which I have seen. I've never been there, but I've had friends who have gone to the Disney family plot, and I've seen it, and I can't completely assure you that they are his ashes in there, but it sure seems like they are. So he's, as far as we all know, he's not actually frozen. And his head, especially, I've heard that one too, that it's only his head that is frozen under Magic Kingdom somewhere. And that's not true at all. He's very much in the Forest Lawn Memorial Park, as far as I know.
I think you are right on that one, and actually I'm very glad that you're right, because I would not see the Magic Kingdom the same if I knew that there was something else going on there.
Yeah, I had a really good friend of mine who I've mentioned before in a podcast, who will not let me speak his name on the podcast, but he works out in Disneyland, and he actually had a private tour recently by Disney, with Disney archivist Dave Smith, who I'm sure you've heard of.
Yeah.
He was the guy who was in charge of getting Walt Disney's office and everything else squared away after Walt passed away at the studios in California. Anyway, so he just knew someone who knew Dave Smith, and they did he did like a private tour of this Disney archives, which I think is incredible, in the animation archives in California. They went to Walt Disney's favorite restaurant, which is, the name escapes me now, the Tam O'Shanter in California, and they went to his to Forest Lawn to view his burial site. So Dave Smith, the guy who's written books about Disney and Disney trivia and knows all that there is about Walt Disney, says that Walt Disney is buried there. So I'm going to trust his judgment and say that's where he actually is.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good authority. The guy who runs the Disney archives probably knows the ins and outs of that company like no one else, or who used to run the archives. So I think we can trust that.
Or he's just the keeper of the secrets, and he visits Walt's frozen head on a daily basis and goes down and talks to him and checks on him. You never know. Hey, Dave Smith could be in on this big conspiracy. Now I hope I get an email from Dave Smith. That would be fun. All right, Herb. So thank you so much for joining me once again on the podcast. I had a lot of fun. This is really cool. I think it was a really cool topic, and it was fun to talk about with you. So thanks for coming back on.
Phil, thanks as always for having me. And remember, if you can dream it, you can do it.
That's true. And if people want to, find out more about you and listen to more of what you have to say, where can they go?
So you can read about all things Walt Disney World at my website, which is worldofwalt.com. New articles every weekday. There's a podcast and forums, and you can check me out on Facebook as well, World of Walt.
Awesome, Herb. Well, thanks a lot again for doing this. And yeah, we'll do another one soon. So thank you for doing it for me tonight.
Thanks, Phil.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
That's going to do it for this week's episode of the Ear to There podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it, as always. And I just ask, if you do enjoy the podcast, please let somebody know about it. There's that guy that you sit next to on the bus or on the train every day, and you're starting to run out of things to talk about. Well, now tomorrow morning, hey, tell them about the Ear to There podcast. I really appreciate that. Also, if you do like the show, please go on to iTunes, give me one of those awesome 5-star ratings that I hear so many people talking about. I'd really appreciate that as well. I'm really having so much fun bringing these episodes to you each and every week. So check back on Monday morning for the next episode of the Ear to There podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and have a great week. Bye-bye.